Hello viewers, Tim Paul here for the latest episode of The Huddle. We've got a returning guest, Simon Westbury, strategic advisor, 1xBet, but also an additional role that you can maybe kick us off by telling us about.
Yeah, I think it was announced a couple of weeks ago when I last saw you, Tim. I'm very proud and honoured to become the chairperson, in the modern day we call it chairperson, of 1xCare, and also the director of the company. But 1xCare in its essence is an NGO focused on safer gambling and player protection, which I maybe think we're going to discuss a little bit. So I'll leave it there. So, yeah, man of many hats these days, Tim.
Yeah, definitely going to ask you a little bit more about that. In case I didn't say already, welcome back. I'm not sure if I did, but always
old friends, Tim. You don't have to say that.
Always a pleasure to speak with you. In terms of your kind of role and your day-to-day duties, how much does 1xCare kind of take up of it? And yeah, just tell us a little bit more about the operations at the moment.
Yeah, I think that 1xCare was something, and I'm on record as saying this, that grew organically from me joining actually a year ago today, 1xBet. It wasn't something that we planned, but we did the Player Safety Index and we saw there was a gap around player protection and safer gambling, and there was many learnings that the industry could learn. Obviously, the industry is not monolithic, so each region has its challenges and different nuances. And the research, we thought, actually, how do we take this research and make something of it? And 1xCare is ultimately that. As I say, it's an independent NGO outside of 1xBet, which, of course, we're funded by 1xBet. We're not hiding that, but we have a separate company. And for purposes of transparency and openness, you'll be able to see everything we do under 1xCare in terms of funding and spend, and also directors, as well as the advisory board going forward. So we've set it up as a separate entity to be truly transparent and truly open.
Best of luck with that venture, and I'm sure we'll keep talking about it kind of as the weeks and months and most likely years in this industry continue. That'll keep you busy, but something we want to talk about today that keep me busy, keep me busy, keep the industry busy. I want to touch on, or maybe more than touch on, social media. And social media, I guess specifically in an industry setting. Generally speaking, I mean, I know you're an avid user, for example, of LinkedIn and things like that, but a very broad one. In general, social media, what's your kind of take? What's your opinion on, if I was to say, just what do you think of social media?
Well, I think it's like everything. There's a time and a place for different types of social media, and I'm a bit old now, so some of the new stuff I don't fully understand. I mean, TikTok I've got no comprehension of. Instagram I struggle with. Facebook is viewed as old now. And obviously LinkedIn is the main tool that I use on a professional level. And, you know, as I say, you're quite right. I'm a very avid user of LinkedIn, and some people take the mickey maybe of how much I use it. But it's a very good tool for me to deliver the message. So, for example, about 1xCare, as I'm saying, like we've got our 4 pillars around education, research, player well-being, and the use of technology in player protection. So actually it's a very good way for me to deliver that message. And I think it's like with every tool, how do you use it? Like, so for example, on my way here, I saw someone had posted something and I called them the bleating comments about, oh, you know, I'm on holiday, can't turn my laptop off, it'll all fall apart if I'm not there. Well, I'm not trying to mimic anyone, sorry, I'm his character there. But actually, if you're that worried about work and your family life balance, why are you using LinkedIn on holiday? And I think some of the stuff that we see is very much for show. Mm-hmm. And as I say, people point the finger at me many times saying, every time I open LinkedIn, I see your face. And I apologise for everyone who has to see my face constantly.
I'm going to see it again now.
Yeah, sorry, everyone. But there's actually how you use it. Now, how do I use it? I use it to promote the company and what we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to do. Every now and again, and I've been very lucky this year that I've received a number of personal awards, I use it to announce or share those. But actually that's part of what I call the media social contract. If you give me an award, I think you're expecting me to share it. And that's kind of the cycle we're in with the media. So actually I think everyone understands that. I think I personally get a bit frustrated seeing some of these self-promotional posts and someone talking about working on holiday and posting it on LinkedIn. I just find it a bit, I don't understand.
Yeah. Your response sums up why I thought it would be, or why we both thought, I guess, it would be interesting to talk about this kind of thing. Because when I asked the question, I did think, it sounds a bit random, what do you think of social media? But there's a reason I'm asking it in this industry, because obviously in any industry you use things like LinkedIn, quite prominently. In case any viewers don't know, I personally wasn't on it and resisted being on it until last year, but now I'm a member of the
and then you had to set up a separate account, because I got your WhatsApp and I thought your WhatsApp had been hacked when you promoted your new account. So
yeah, there was well, I don't know what issues with LinkedIn. Thought it was a bot, but I'm not here to rant about that. I'm a human. Just for the record, this may help.
He's certainly a human. He's a good friend of mine.
But when it comes to, and you mentioned the kind of thing that we've all maybe thought about people with maybe disingenuous or self-promotional posts. But you've also said that you get a bit of stick maybe for using it a lot. So you might be a good person for me to ask, do some people, and I don't mean you, but do some people use it too much? Too much for what they can get in return, perhaps?
I think the question to what you get in return is up to you. From my point of view, as I say, do I use it too much at the moment, Tim? I'm doing a lot of interviews, which is part of what I do. And before 1xCare came, I was representing one of the biggest gambling companies in the world, and we were trying to change perception and move the needle and challenge some of the pre-existing stereotypes that are out there. And I think we've done a good job at addressing those, and I think me and you have had many chats about that. So actually, am I using it too much? I don't know. I'm doing a lot of interviews trying to move a dial, and actually it's kind of subjective or objective. There's no real yes to that. But I think there's a lot of people in this industry now who are trying to make their way in the industry and creating their personal brand on LinkedIn and promoting their personal brand more than the company they work for. And I've said this many times, the name on the front of the shirt is always bigger than the name on the back of the shirt. So I think if you use it to promote what you're doing within the company, to promote the aims and objectives of what you're trying to achieve, rather than, I call it the X Factor sob story, creating an X Factor story to get views or likes. Now, that's actually something I've evolved in, because I'm very competitive. When I first started with 1xBet, it was all about how many LinkedIn views, likes I got. Actually, when you look at the analytics of it, I made a post the other day which got over 30,000 impressions and 20,000 members reached. Over 70% of that was outside of my network, but in terms of likes and comments, it wasn't as big as others. So actually, when you're talking about how do they use it, how do people get anything out of it, it's actually the dynamics of what you see behind. As I say, I reflect again, I think there's a lot of people making their way in the industry, and we celebrate that, and we want people to do well, but I just think it's how you use it.
Yeah, how you use it is I think is a key point, because I also want to, I might sound like I might occasionally moan about LinkedIn or social media. We certainly recognize the value of it as a platform when it comes to, for a company, for example, we have a reach on LinkedIn, and this interview will go out on there, and the benefits are, obvious and plentiful there. But I guess what we're talking about is the personal brand, and it's interesting you brought up the personal brand versus the company brand. I mean, I don't have any notes or questions prepared on that, but that sounds like something sort of worth getting into more. But then I suppose, how does someone know if they've crossed that line? And in an organization, who is it up to perhaps to maybe tell them? Is it the social media manager or the CEO, or,
I think the problem is it's not if they've crossed the line, because people don't actually realise, because I see so many posts, and where I first got this from was people announcing they're going to trade shows and let's delve in and dive into. And I was looking at it going, no one really cares if you're at a trade show. Honestly, no one really cares if I'm there, if I'm totally honest. Why are you announcing that? Why are you making it grandiose? Turn up, do your job, have your meetings. Okay, make a LinkedIn comment, you're there just for extra reach, but I don't need this big AI-generated message about jumping in and delving in and digging deep. I mean, it's not... I suppose I just write my own posts.
I think there was a bit of pushback to that ahead of IGB Live. I think there were some people who were doing it ironically on LinkedIn. So even I noticed that really in my network. People sort of were saying, we're doing what you said there, I don't know if you noticed it, but there were one or two people. I mean, I can't remember the names, probably luckily, because they're probably
let's not kill them on it.
Exactly. But I kind of almost commend it internally. They would be like, I'm going to be there, blah blah, and then they were sort of saying, at the end they were like, just kidding. I don't really care. And there was a bit of irony there, which maybe reflects what you're saying.
I think what you're saying about there is like when you wanted to maybe delve into, you don't have questions. I've just had a thought on it. Like, are people using it? How do you know the difference between personal and that? I think when you make it all about you, then you're really using, look at me, I've done this. Mm-hmm. When actually, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure someone will go and find a LinkedIn post where I've not done this. I'm normally sharing an interview and saying what the interview's about, or talking about something to do with 1xBet or 1xCare. Clearly, I did a post in Tbilisi last week about dining alone, and someone will find that, so I'm sure they're going to bring that up. But actually, that was a point of experience, but it's not every day I do that post. And I think a lot of times I see posts, and maybe because I've got lots of information around the industry, I know a lot of the posts aren't really sharing reality. And I think Tom Galenese, also a very good guy, was talking about this. Everyone's talking about constant success and constant, everyone's successful and no one has any failures. Now, I suppose when you talk about a failure or a challenge on LinkedIn, it also becomes a bit of perceived as an X factor post.
Yeah.
So it's getting the balance right. And maybe that post I'm talking about in Tbilisi, where I talked about 18 years in the industry and how I'd evolved from not wanting to eat alone to actually enjoying eating alone when I'm traveling. People could say, oh, it's a bit self-indulgent or whatever. And I think those self-indulgent posts where you see people shouting about themselves, but they're there because of the company that they represent, and they don't really fully acknowledge that company, then it becomes a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, we're fresh off the World Cup, which we don't have to mention as England fans particularly, but...
No, Argentina didn't win, I'm quite happy to discuss.
I've got an Argentina writer on my team, so I reserve comment on that, but even she knows after the semi-final I might agree a little bit. But the reason I bring up the World Cup is because obviously there's it's a classic pundit cliche, but a team versus a team of individuals. But I think we even did see that with some of the World Cup squads. France, quite individualistic, didn't work together in the semi-final, and then ultimately Spain, slightly less on individuals and more on the collective, came through. And I mean, that's maybe a tenuous link, but it somewhat links to the individual versus the team. Yeah.
Maybe I've said this about myself personally, and I'm kind of going against everything I've said. Any company I work for, maybe I become too evangelical and too dedicated to what we do. So maybe I talk about them too much. And I won an award, recommendation, or commendation the other day. And actually I was embarrassed to win it because actually, I think you've known me long enough, Tim, it's not really about me. And I kind of at the spearhead of a large company. And I'm the guy that speaks for the company. So actually anything I win is on behalf of the company, and I genuinely mean that. Now, some people might view that with cynicism, as I view some LinkedIn posts, but I can say that hand on heart and honestly.
So maybe putting together what we've said, if you were to give, and we want to be careful giving lessons or pointers, because like you said earlier, it's all subjective. So, one thing we say might be completely opposite for someone else, or depends on the market, depends on the region or the network. But if you had to give maybe a couple of pointers, and they could be subjective and just your personal opinion on what maybe, let's say, young execs coming through who are quite new to this, or maybe are not new to this, have been doing it a certain way, but maybe need to change it up to be a bit more, whatever it is, corporate, or they've joined a new company. What would you advise in this kind of, I guess, social media space?
It's a challenging question, and I'm not trying to buy myself some time. As I say, I'm not an expert in this space, because actually I'm learning as I do. And I think, look, everyone's got a story to tell, and the story that anyone has to tell is important. But as the industry is evolving, and I think I've talked about it, hopefully we're moving to a more sustainable viewpoint, which is why we're promoting 1xCare at the moment. To move past short-termism, I think those people that are using LinkedIn, one, you need to understand yourself. Two, you need to be authentic to yourself. And I think the posts that really grate on people are those posts that people are just thinking, that's not authentic. You've kind of thought of what to write and you've fit a narrative.
And possibly use AI to generate it.
Look, I think that's a point that people want to talk about. For me, I'll always write my own post because I struggle with spelling and punctuation and grammar. I might run it through AI just to check it. But I think understand who you are, understand the message you want to deliver, and don't laugh when I say this, don't make it about yourself. Make it about, because ultimately if you work hard and you deliver within the company that you're delivering, the rest will come. And I've learned that through my industry, through my career. It's not something I've ever aspired to be sat in this chair in front of camera, but I think a lot of people now are using LinkedIn as a way to accelerate their personal brand image to get to a level quicker. And ultimately, my view is there can only be certain C-level jobs. There can only be a certain amount of C-level job. Don't worry about the job title, worry about the job you're doing.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think there's nothing wrong with building your own brand, as we'll all admit.
I think you need to.
Here,
I think you need to, and I think it needs to be authentic to you, and don't create a persona that's not genuine because people see through it.
Yeah, I think that there's a key point about not running the race. Let's say not finishing the race before it's run. I don't know if that's a phrase or I've coined a phrase or it doesn't make any sense. But you know, when you say about because you know, even I've seen things in the industry or in my career where people are not worried about what the job they're doing, and that's your day to day, and that's very important.
Again, I'm not here to call anyone out, but most people, when I was at school, everyone wanted to be a fighter pilot or something similar. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. Or a bank manager, I also said, which is very strange.
I was going to say investment banking was very big when
I said bank manager, I was going to be the local branch manager, but I think, but now everyone aspires to be a footballer. And ultimately, 0.1% of the 1% make a footballer. Everyone is now in this industry aspiring to be at a certain level, but to get, and I'm not saying it because I'm there or I've been there or I want to be there in the future. Those roles are limited. Mm-hmm. And actually, it doesn't matter if you don't get there. You can still have a very successful career without being the 1% of the 1%. So just be comfortable with who you are. Find your own way. Build your brand, right? Because that does matter. We used to do it in the bars and outside the trade shows in the old handshake manner and sharing business cards. People do it on LinkedIn now. So that's great. But just be genuine in everything you do.
Makes a lot of sense. Let's see what people think on LinkedIn and on social media. But Simon, as always, thanks for joining us and really enjoyed the conversation.
As always, Tim, it's a pleasure.
Thank you.